1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004, 1,005, 1,006. Go. Going. Take it in. Go. Come on, Alex. Knife only, Alex. Knife only, Alex. Knife only. Get out of the clinch, Alex. Don't let him take you down, Alex. Punch him more, Andrew. Punch him more. Punch him more. Right there.
All right, so yesterday I finished up Edged Weapons Overview from ShivWorks. That's Craig Douglas's company. And the general gist of the class is the defense of and the deployment of blades within the context of a clinch primarily. So it boils down, it's a knife class. And this is more or less going to be a quick review or an after action report, if you want to call it that, of that class. And I'll just go ahead and spill the beans on it right now. What an absolutely phenomenal class this was. Craig Douglas and his co-instructor Brian are absolutely amazing instructors, are very talented at what they do and teaching the curriculum that they teach. Absolutely amazing job. The class itself was full of a bunch of great people. I'll just go ahead and throw out some shout outs. Jason, Alex, Alejandra. It was a great time doing the Force on Force evolutions with you. By the way, my offer still stands. If you want to learn how to poke holes and things at 1,200 feet per second, let me know. Ian, thank you so much, especially on day 2 when you gave me all those little tips and tricks when we started using the blades at range. All the little tips and tricks that you showed me in terms of actually throwing the blade out, and especially when it came to footwork. Those little details and those little pointers that you gave me were so helpful, and it really helped me a lot. So I really thank you so much for that. And I hope to see you soon so we can maybe do some traditional longsword work, because I think that'd be really cool. So thank you so much for that again. And there's a whole bunch of others. If I gave you a shout out and you happen to be watching this, you know who you are. But what an amazing class full of a bunch of amazing people. So moving on to the class itself, again, it was a knife class fundamentally, primarily on the defense and the usage of a knife within that clinch. Although in day 2, we did talk about fairly extensively the use of a knife to prevent the re-clinching of somebody or someone re-engaging the clinch. So using the knife at distance prevents someone from re-engaging the clinch on you. But the primary focus of the class for both days was the defense and the use of the blade within that clinch context. Now, although this was fundamentally a knife class, a lot of these principles, especially the wrestling principles, will still apply if you're using a firearm in the clinch as well. And more of the firearm stuff is part of their ECQC class. But again, there's a lot of overlap there in terms of principles. Anyway, I very much appreciate how the class was structured. It was very, very systematic and structured. And Craig Douglas did a phenomenal job at setting up the class the way he did. Everything that you learn is based off of everything else that you previously learned in the class. And once you build up enough of the block of the content, you then pressure test it. And then at the end of each day, you do a force-on-force evolution, they call it. Basically, it's a force-on-force validation of what you learned throughout that day. Now, that might just be part of my personality because I'm I very much appreciate systems and procedures. That's kind of part of my personality. But regardless of that, it makes sure there's no wasted time in the class, and they really make that a very important part of their curriculum, making it so that way every minute that you're in that class, that you're spending money to be at that class, especially if you have to travel and have other external expenses just outside of the course fee, that every minute that you're in that class, you are learning something or practicing something, and there's no wasted time, and you get the most out of that class that you can. So there's no going off on random tangents or anything like that. Everything has a purpose. Every minute has a purpose, and therefore you get value out of every minute of that course, which again I very much appreciate, because I've certainly attended other courses that are a little bit more loose and a little bit more relaxed. And I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but when you're spending the kind of money that you're spending to go to a course, you really want to make every minute of that count, because courses are expensive, especially you have to travel for them. And again, they do a very good job at making sure that the time you spend at that class and the money that you spend at that class is worth every penny of it. Outside of all the things that they teach you in that class, probably the thing I appreciate the most about the class, as well as the force on force aspect. To me, force on force is so incredibly important, because everything is just a theory until it's actually tested against legitimate resistance, and force on force is generally the best method for that. Certainly when it comes to things like this, there's a lot of theory and weird stuff that you see, especially around knives in the gun community, in the martial arts community especially. They fantasize about knife fights, and when you look at knife fights, and especially when you experience a knife fight within a force-on-force context, of course, you learn very quickly the realities of what this actually looks like and feels like. And in my opinion, that is probably the most valuable part of force on force, giving you as close as we can the experience of, in this case, that knife fight without the dire consequences of an actual knife fight. And therefore it shows you the reality, gives you an insight into the reality of what these things look like. So that way, if you go off and attend other courses and they start talking about things, you can look back on your force on force experience and go, and you can have some actual experience behind you and look at things critically and actually have a pretty informed idea of what is likely to work and what is likely not to work within whatever you are being taught. So the force on force evolutions were a very large and important part of the class, as well as the more isolated force on force stuff that we did too, to isolate different skills or techniques. So all of that was really important. It's one of the things I very much appreciate about the class. Anyways, if you are interested in taking EWO, so Edge Weapons Overview, I highly, highly recommend it. It was a phenomenal class, and I couldn't recommend it enough, and I can't recommend Craig Douglas and his crew enough. Absolutely, just 10 out of 10 instructors, 10 out of 10 people, and I look forward to attending more of Craig Douglas's classes. Hopefully I can do ECQC in the near future, and maybe another Edged Weapons Overview class. I really, really look forward to training with him in the future. Anyways, I'm Tyler Austin from Gungnir Strategic. Thank you so much for watching.